it take till he knows that too many people have died?
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thanks again to the wonderful Nicole Bell of Crooks and Liars. We love speaking with her. And coming up in this hour, we're going to be speaking with Josh Silver of Represent Us. It's a great
really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Very,
really,
very, very, very much.
Really important thing we should all be involved in. But
such a tease. You're not going to say what it is.
No. No. They have to listen. They have to listen and find out. I'll tease it a little bit more later, too. Some other big news this week was, of course, the Senate advanced the controversial immigration bill. And we say controversial.
Subcommittee. Well, actually, not a committee, not a subcommittee.
Yes. The Senate Judiciary Committee, to be specific, advanced it. It will be voted on by the full Senate most likely next month. And in the process, they considered about 200 different amendments over 5 days. One of the most frustrating, at least to the American worker, was submitted by Senator Orrin Hatch. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago and hoped that this amendment wouldn't pass. But in fact, it has. Senate Orrin Hatch submitted an amendment, and a group of 8 senators on the committee agreed to it. What it would do is allow more H-1B visas. Those are the visas that allow tech workers to come in from overseas when, theoretically, a company cannot find an American worker to do the job. Well, this program, this amendment, would expand the use of H-1B visas and soften the requirement that companies are supposed to check to see if they can find an American citizen to do the job first. That's the process as it stands now, theoretically. And the AFL-CIO has picked a big fight with the major tech companies supporting this bill, like Facebook and Google and Apple, which we heard about recently. This issue is just so complex. It's
not complex. I'm sorry, this is not complex. This is NAFTA in our country.
Yes.
This is, NAFTA was that giant sucking sound, sucking all of the jobs out of our country because they could find cheaper labor elsewhere. Right now, we have unemployment rates, they're listing in the 7%, actually in the 13 to 15%, and higher depending on what group you're looking at. So we have a large supply of workers.
Right.
They want to increase it even further because when there's a large supply and not a huge amount of demand, that makes the cost go down.
Right.
High supply, low demand, low cost.
Right.
Which means wages go down. This is NAFTA at home.
Right, but it's not just this portion of it that's complicated. I'm looking at 7 different articles in front of me, 7 different pieces of this overall puzzle. You have senators like Orrin Hatch giving a bigger giveaway to tech companies. You have unions fighting these same tech companies, saying this will hurt American jobs, and it will also hurt people applying to be U.S. citizens because they're going to get paid lower wages. There's, they're going to get undercut here too. At the same time, you have the FTC looking into these big tech companies,
like Google,
because they have too much power, which is evidenced.
The Senate looking into Apple for not paying any taxes.
Right. I mean, there are so many components of this puzzle that all boil down when you put it all together, and what you see is that these companies are just too damn powerful.
And they're taking the advantage of any political situation to make it turn out well for them.
Right.
They're saying, oh, you want to have a path to citizenship? Then give us more money.
Right.
Buy us off. You want universal health care? Then you have to buy off the insurance companies.
Exactly.
If, anything you want, we want our costs lower and our taxes lower and our profits increased, and we're not going to share, by the way. Oh, and if the banking system goes down, you better bail us out. But if you want a loan, go to hell.
Right. I mean, this web of just stories released this week where the IRS is under investigation because they're supposedly targeting conservative groups, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Yet, at the same time, the IRS is also giving these big, huge companies tax breaks out the yin-yang, and these these big companies are pressuring the very representatives that are supposed to legislate and regulate them, and the only company looking into it is the Federal Trade Commission, which has looked into Google before and hasn't stood up to them.
Right. They just like 5 months ago, they unanimously decided to not proceed.
Right. And that was in the search engine business line. This is now about their advertising.
Right.
It's just, this issue is so complex, but it all boils down to the fact that these lawmakers are not working for us.
There's your common denominator.
They're working for these big companies. And we have groups like the Federal Trade Commission and like unions like the AFL-CIO that are trying to step in here and rein this in.
But then
in
it
the
comes down to,
meantime,
if you block it, then, see, you got in the way of immigration reform.
exactly.
Every single person who is a worker here that doesn't have documents, vote against them because they're bad. We were trying to help everybody out by maybe someday giving you a 10-year path to possible citizenship without any rights whatsoever, and you better have a job. So anyways, you're going to be slave labor anyway. But you would have had a path to citizenship
if
only they had given away even more to the major corporations and lowered the wage base in this country again.
Right. I mean, it makes your head spin.
It makes you want to give up on the immigration reform.
Right.
Not because I'm anti-reforming immigration. I'm anti-giving away all of this and giving away more workers' rights and lowering our wage base again.
Well, and quite the opposite. I'm pro-immigration reform. But this bill, I mean, this isn't just the only bad part in this bill.
No.
This bill is riddled with provisions that if you asked the individual person about, they'd probably think are insane, like a path to citizenship being tied up, being dependent on 90% of our border being 90% of border crossings being prevented, and 100% of our border crossings being monitored, some of which by surveillance drones. But really? I mean, we were just talking with Nicole Bell about the use of militarized zones, weaponized drones. Are we any more comfortable with those same drones flying along our borders, spying on U.S. citizens, and possibly snagging a few people who are trying to immigrate here illegally? This is a web of nonsense, and I'm sorry, but as much as I want immigration reform, and as much as I know Democrats want a win for the president, a win for the Democrats,
At what cost?
I don't think we should get it if it means screwing over American workers, militarizing our border, setting benchmarks that are likely never to be met, and giving another big giveaway to companies that really don't need one. I mean, how much do we give up in order to get legislation passed? And then are we the bad guys for saying that we don't support immigration reform?
That's the politics of it. That's how it's more of the hostage taking. That's
Yes.
if you don't give us everything we want. And you'll notice that it was Patrick Leahy, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, who wanted to put forward that, because there are certain rights that are given to immigrants based on marriage. He wanted to make sure that same-sex marriages were recognized.
Right, because they are legal in other countries.
Right. And they're legal in a lot of states here now, more and more,
Right.
thankfully.
Right.
But nope, that would have killed the bill. Well, why don't we turn around and say, well, if you're going to bring in a bunch of foreign workers and not look at American workers first, that'll kill the bill too. It just seems the other side they just don't care. I think it's more that when you have nothing to lose, when you're willing to burn the place down to get something done, you have more of a spine because you just don't give a hoot.
Right. You almost
you're
needed a
able to
bleep
say,
there.
We don't care. You're going to kill this bill. Whereas Democrats actually want to get it done. So,
Right, but why do they want to get it done? Because this bill, as it stands, isn't going to fix the immigration system. It doesn't streamline the path to immigration.
No,
it
makes
doesn't
much
shorten
worse.
the process.
No.
It doesn't fix anything for the 11 million people who are already here.
It's time to sit down again and say, what are the priorities?
Right.
And are they being met? And
Right.
if they aren't, even if the 1, 2, 3 top priorities aren't being met, for why we started this whole process, and only the 1, 2, 3 top priorities of big business are being met, then this isn't an immigration bill anymore.
Right.
Let's stop calling it an immigration bill if it's not an immigration bill.
And I will even back that up and say that when it came to health care, many of us, including myself, criticized people who were just naysayers and said, don't pass this bill because it doesn't go far enough. But I think this is a different situation. In the health care bill, there was at least some benefit. There were these health care exchanges. There were expansion of Medicaid to lower income people, at least until Republican states. There were subsidies. There were, some transparency on medical billing costs and insurance premium costs. There were limitations on how much profit insurance companies could make out of what you pay in premiums. I do not see those same benefits in this immigration bill. I don't see equivalent benefits for either American workers, for our immigration system, for the people who have come here just seeking a better life. I don't see any of those benefits. I see this as a giveaway to the military-industrial complex. It's a giveaway to tech companies, and it's an racist, insulting, homophobic bill. If there is good to be found here, somebody please point it out to me, and I will happily make a correction. So there's my rant, and I will put away these 7 articles, and we will get into what the bigger problem is here. We're going to be speaking to Josh Silver about that next, a couple more minutes, but about that very soon. And he's going to tell us what we can do about it. So you're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle Encheno, and we have a lot more in store, so stick around.
Hey, it's Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And this is Talking Left. Sometimes the collusion between big corporations and our government is so ridiculous, so rancid, that it makes you laugh, cry, and gag all at once. And then you pass out from the sheer stink of it. That's how I felt when I saw the compromise that Senators Chuck Schumer and Orrin Hatch reached on the big immigration overhaul that recently oozed out of the Judiciary Committee. Some people oppose this reform bill because they claim it provides amnesty for foreign workers who entered our country illegally. But with the foul hash cooked up by Schumer and Hatch, what it really provides is amnesty for America's avaricious, wage-busting, high-tech tycoons. Such plutocratic princes of Silicon Valley as Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook and Larry Ellison of Oracle have glommed onto immigration reform as a way to punt more of their highly skilled American engineers, programmers, and scientists out the door, replacing them with cheaper foreigners they want to import from India and other low-pay lands. These narcissistic billionaires are spending millions on campaign donations, lobbyists, and front groups to loosen immigration laws so they can wave in more than 110,000 foreign techers each year through a channel called the H-1B visa. It's no surprise that Schumer, a weak-kneed Democrat nicknamed Corporate Chuck, caved in to the tycoons. Not only does the bill nearly double the number of H-1B workers coming to displace Americans, but Schumer meekly accepted Hatch's amendments to let tech bosses give jobs to foreigners without first offering them to our homegrown professionals. Under another Hatchet job, high-tech giants will even be able to fire Americans in order to bring in H-1B employees. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help fight this, go to www.aflcio.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome to Absurdity Today. I'm Juliana Forlano. A surprising new report suggests that cutting back on salt may not be worth the struggle. What with climate change and superstorms and killer tornadoes in North Korea, Fukushima, really, what's the point? In related news, scientists can now definitively say that climate change is the reason ducks aren't migrating south. Still no word, though, on why D.C. has become a breeding ground for so many old coots and loons. YouTube is set to launch a paid subscription service for some of its most popular specialty channels, which I guess would be like Cats on the Can, Some Guy Talking, Side Boob Today. 6 million views for a pooping cat. The toilet paper part was a nice touch, though. In tech news, Sony is releasing a phone with a camera you can use underwater, thus finally allowing millions of Americans to take a nice picture of our mortgages. The Norwegian city of Oslo gets its energy by burning trash, but it's running out of garbage. To help out, the U.S. will send over all of Fox News. Archaeologists believe they may have found the ruins of a lost metropolis in Belize. It's known as the White City and has been eagerly sought for years by explorers, scholars, and Tea Party patriots. A sexual assault prevention officer is under investigation for sexual assault. I don't think that's it. He was doing research, apparently. This week's show was not sponsored by Pop-Tarts that have a new peanut butter and chocolate flavor. It's the perfect way to start your binge day. The federal government won't be inspecting meat slaughterhouses anymore. Instead, the industry is being encouraged to self-regulate, even though everybody knows that self-regulation will probably lead to blindness. I'm Juliana Forlano. You've been watching Absurdity Today. If you like these episodes emailed to your inbox, please let us know at absurditytoday@gmail.com. You can support us by clicking the like button and clicking the subscribe button and watching some of our back episodes on YouTube. See you next week.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle Enchano. Big thanks to Juliana Forlano for allowing us to play her Absurdity Today clips in the break. If you're listening to the podcast and you didn't catch that, you certainly have to go over to Juliana Forlano's absurditytoday.com and
right
check
to the
it
YouTube
out.
channel, and they're all there.
Yes,
They're really good.
Yes, and
I like they're fast.
we'll put the link up with today's show just since we referenced it. All the focus over the past 2 weeks have been scandal, 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 scandal. We talked about it here. We spoke with Hal Sparks, but it's been a scandal-thon. It's been ridiculous. And it's claimed another administrative official from the IRS, Lois Lerner. She was the director of the tax-exempt organizations division for the IRS, and she has pled the fifth in a congressional oversight committee. Now, Shane, there's some debate over whether or not she actually can use her Fifth Amendment right here.
Yeah, there's only debate within in Daryl Issa's mind. I really, essentially, what she came in and then she gave an opening statement, which a lot of people do, and then when they started asking questions, as advised by her attorney, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, refused to answer questions, and to which Daryl Issa, after she left, said, "Wait a minute, you kind of talked there in the beginning with your opening statement. You waived your Fifth Amendment rights." Now, Daryl Issa is not a judge in a courtroom, and that's the fundamental problem that he's having. If you were to go into a court of law in a criminal case and you took the stand as a defendant or anyone else and started testifying in front of a jury, and then later on in the middle of it said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to answer that on the Fifth Amendment," the judge would say, "No, you've waived it because you're in front of a jury. You can't partially testify. You're there to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and you would be prejudicing the jury by only giving half the story." Whether Daryl Issa considers himself an investigative body or not, obviously he thinks of himself as judge, jury, and executioner, politically speaking. He's investigating like a cop. So if you were to be questioned by the police, you're not on trial, you're being questioned by the police, and you start giving some answers, and all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, are you accusing me of something? Wait a minute, I'm going to stop answering questions now. You can do that. You can invoke the Fifth Amendment anytime. And by the way, the Fifth Amendment itself doesn't have any limitations as to time, place, method, manner. So it's ridiculous for him to be saying this. It really reveals something about Daryl Issa and the fact that he considers himself a judge, that he is judging these people. He's not actually investigating. He's an oversight committee, not a jury.
So it's essentially a trumped-up scandal within a trumped-up scandal.
And it's a way for Daryl Issa to stay in the news.
Okay, good to know.
Because probably what he'll do is he'll call her back and say, "No, you waived it." She'll say, "I take the Fifth again," and then so he gets another day of headlines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely comfortable with her taking the Fifth on this, but but that's neither here nor there.
Right. Actually, the bigger argument is to say, I have done nothing criminal, and I take the Fifth.
Which she did. She said, I have broken no laws and
Right.
no rules or
I
IRS
understand
regulations.
that, but if you are asserting that you have broken no laws, then you can't incriminate yourself. Think about it. If you haven't broken a law, there's nothing you could say that would incriminate yourself because you have committed no crime. There lies the problem with her doing this. And we don't get the information that we need. So if you haven't broken the law, then why aren't you talking?
Right. It doesn't sit right with me. However, while Congress is focused on the IRS scandal and the AP and the Benghazi and whatever else new they come up with, more scandals day after day are being ignored. A recent one that
An actual
scandal
that actually
I think,
affects people.
that actually affects real life people was posted on Huffington Post Business. And interestingly enough, this was from a 2012 report. It was from a committee, a congressional committee, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, in which they were looking at which portion of taxes come from individuals and people. Well, the scandal here is individual people paying way more in taxes, now covering about 63% of the federal revenue, used to be 45%. Corporations, however, used to pay 32%. Now they're down to 17%. That's all they contribute to the federal government's revenue. So I think that's the scandal we should be focusing on. And we're going to speak with Josh Silver of Represent Us about that and much more in just a moment. So stick around.
This is going to be fun.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Outside radical groups, squawked Representative Scott Garrett at a recent Republican inquisition into a citizen's petition that's been submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Garrett is foaming at the mouth on behalf of corporate chieftains who are pouring unlimited and untold amounts of their shareholders' money into our elections. The great majority of Americans agree that, at the very least, shareholders have a right to be told how much of their money is being spent on behalf of which candidates. So, more than 500,000 citizens have petitioned the SEC for such a disclosure rule. Who are these scary citizens, considered such a threat to corporate power that a Congress critter is tarring them publicly as outside radicals? They're professors from leading law schools, state and national elected officials, pension fund directors, public interest advocates, and corporate shareholders. Not exactly outsiders, much less radicals. And that's what makes them so dangerous to the autocratic elites who run corporations as their own fiefdoms. Top executives want no accountability for the hundreds of millions of shareholder dollars they're spending to elect corporate lickspittles like Garrett. Don't question us, they demand, just trust us. No. Far from earning trust, they've already wrecked our economy and betrayed our nation's egalitarian ideals while feathering their own plutocratic nests. Now they want free rein to pervert America's democratic process with clandestine election campaigns secretly financed with other people's money. This is Jim Hightower saying, no, these kleptocrats are the real radicals. It's time to stop them, not only by disclosing their thievery, but ultimately by outlawing it and returning elections to the people. To join this effort, contact Public Citizen at www.citizen.org.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. As the immigration reform bill heads to the full U.S. Senate for consideration, the AFL-CIO says immigration reform is still its highest priority this year. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka says progress so far has been commendable, with a strong coalition united in support of reform. But he says there's no reason that coalition should accept amendments from Republican Senator Orrin Hatch regarding tech workers in the H-1B visa program. The AFL-CIO says if Hatch's amendments are adopted, it will amount to an attack on American workers because they would allow tech giants to bring in foreign workers at lower wages without first offering those jobs to Americans. American workers could even be fired to make way for the foreign workers. The AFL-CIO says if tech workers are to truly benefit, policy needs to be crafted that rewards the people who actually write the computer code at tech companies rather than rewarding tech corporate honchos who just write checks to politicians. Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton will be signing into law a bill that allows home care providers to organize a union. Jesse Russell reports.
The legislation allows child care and personal care attendants who receive state subsidies to seek union representation. The child care providers are likely to seek representation from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, while the personal care attendants will seek representation with the Service Employees International Union. State Senator Sandy Pappas said the legislation was intended to get government out of the way, as it's now up to the workers to collect enough signatures to form those unions.
We just got out of their way. That's what we did. The state should not have been in their way, and that was the whole point of our legislation.
State Senator Michael Nelson said the arguments against allowing the workers to organize echoed those once used to deny teachers the right to organize.
It's the same arguments that they were using back then as they were using now against why these people should not have the right to bargain. And that's all it is giving them the right to bargain, the right to try and form a union, to do the hard work that they're going to need the necessary for them to do to get to that point.
President Obama, raise our pay! President Obama, do it today! President Obama, raise our pay!
Washington, D.C. federal workers and low-wage contractor jobs calling out President Obama to do something for the 2 million low-wage federal workers employed through contractors. This unidentified worker described his plight at one of the strike rallies in Washington.
I get paid only $8.50 an hour. I receive no health insurance, no sick pay, and I have Crohn's disease, so I need to have health insurance in order to get by.
Long Island, New York car wash workers will be paid $75,000 in restitution for stolen wages. MC Islip, D&J Central Car Wash's owner, pleaded guilty to violations of New York state labor law and agreed to the restitution for the workers, many of whom earn as little as $4 an hour. Car wash workers across New York state are fighting for their rights as they combat what Make the Road New York says is rampant wage theft. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Joining us now is Josh Silver. He is the CEO of Represent Us. This is an amazing organization that is working to support the American Anti-Corruption Act, and it's something that we all need to be paying attention to. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we are thrilled to speak with you. In reading the act, the Anti-Corruption Act, and reading about your organization as if to provide a perfect example, this week there was a piece in the New York Times entitled "Banks Lobbyists Help in Drafting Financial Bills," and Representative Jim Himes from Connecticut quoted, essentially said, "It's appalling, it's disgusting, it's wasteful, and it opens the possibility of conflicts of interest and corruption. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in." Is that not a perfect example of what you guys are fighting against?
It's amazing, and you and I didn't even coordinate this, and that's the article that's sitting here in front of me on my computer I was about to talk about. I mean, sometimes I really wonder, whether you care about the environment, education, healthcare, media, telecom, poverty, no matter what issue you care about, how many times do you have to just ram your head against the wall and lose until you realize that actually it's all about the money? This case was phenomenal. 70 lines in a piece of legislation in the U.S. House out of 85 lines, that is lines in a paragraph lines in a document, were literally written word by word by Citigroup, one of the largest banks, and of course a bank that was bailed out. And, of course, this is done by Democrats and Republicans. This is not a partisan corruption. This is a systemic corruption. Another article I have here in front of me is about climate change and about how both Democrats and Republicans, when push comes to shove in the Congress, refuse to move a climate change bill to the floor, and we are completely stuck, and it's almost as if an asteroid is hurtling towards Earth, making our democracy and our society eventually impossible if we don't fix this problem.
Exactly. It is the root of all evil. Money, the cliche is that money is the root of all evil. Money in politics is the root of all, the love of money is the root of all evil. But money in politics, I think, is the root of our nation's destruction. And one thing I want to point out, I know that most of our audience is probably on the left and progressive, but this is a bipartisan organization that you have going, including representatives from Occupy Wall Street all the way to DC Tea Party members. This is an issue that spans the political spectrum because it is so invasive. How on earth did you get this group of people together to work on this issue?
Because what's happening in this country right now is phenomenal, and that is, if you look at what's been happening now, regardless of what your beliefs are on any given issue, when you look at Rand Paul standing up next to Bernie Sanders, of course, Rand Paul, a hard right Tea Party senator next to the farthest left senator, Bernie Sanders, an independent, decrying the use of indiscriminate use of drones, or if you look at how a massive number of Tea Party activists stood up digitally alongside Move On members, decrying the Monsanto Protection Act that essentially created immunity so that Monsanto, this agri-giant, can just, sell toxic food if they want, and literally the courts can do nothing about it. We're starting to see a full circle where the traditional notions of right, left, of Democrat, Republican, as is viewed in the mainstream and in Washington, are becoming actually they're not real. They don't reflect where the American people are. Where the American people, grassroots people are, is mostly in agreement on about 80 or 90% of issues, and then deeply divided on social issues, such as abortion, gay marriage, and in issues like welfare. And so we believe that in order to fix the problem of money in politics, it's going to take a massive movement, and more than just the 21% of Americans who self-identify as liberal. You're going to have to capitalize on the fact that grassroots conservatives and moderates are just as incensed. Poll after poll show this. They're almost as angry as liberals about money in politics, and they're mad as hell and want to do something about it. So the trick is, how do we put together a movement and a campaign to get money out of politics and restore the American people as the primary concern of politicians by enlisting all of the people and putting aside, for the moment, our deep divisions on social issues? If we don't do that, if we can't figure out how to do it, we cannot win.
Absolutely. And that's why I love the website. It's represent.us. So it's Represent Us. And just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Josh Silver. Josh, tell us about the bill, the American Anti-Corruption Act. I think it covers just about everything we could ask for in cleaning up politics: campaign finance, increasing the power of the FEC, transparency, encouraging participation in democracy. Is there anything I left out there?
No, and Lawrence Lessig, the Harvard professor and an amazing guy, he describes it, and a historian, describes it as the most bold, most comprehensive legislative proposal on this issue ever seen in the history of the country. And the logic is this: if we have to stop rallying behind something narrow focus like the Disclose Act that would make all money transparent and get rid of these secret 501c4 organizations, or just getting behind the public funding of elections. These are both really important, but up until now, we've been trying to pass them in isolation for the most part. And what we've realized is we need a comprehensive, transformative fix that would create citizen-funded elections and actually make it so that every person in America has the ability to actually contribute to politics with public funds. We have to radically change lobbying, like, for example, force senators and House members to wait 5 years before they start to lobby after they serve in government, making all money transparent, and a slew of other strong restrictions on lobbying that doesn't exist today. But that's a great proposal, and it is the Anti-Corruption Act. You can see it at anticorruptionact.org or at represent.us. But the real question, of course, is how do we pass it? Because what we've seen is about 35 years of failure to pass anything of substance, really since Watergate in 1974. And what we believe is you have to do three things. You have to get millions of people to become so-called citizen co-sponsors of the American Anti-Corruption Act. Then you have to go across the country. Before you introduce it in Congress, Congress is toxic. You have to go out across the country and get every member of the House of Representatives on record as for or against the American Anti-Corruption Act. If they're for it, they're anti-corrupt. If they're against it, they're corrupt.
Yeah.
It's almost like a new binary. Instead of Republican and Democrat, which doesn't matter, they're all sold out for the most part. It's you're corrupt, you're anti-corrupt. Then, third part, you unseat from office politicians who won't get behind the Anti-Corruption Act, and you create a massive movement and a focused political strategy enlisting environmentalists, healthcare advocates, economic justice advocates, everybody understanding that they've got to put their other issue not completely aside, but make it the same level of importance as money in politics and work on both simultaneously and unseat anybody who's opposed.
Yeah, I think that it really, you have to start here. And while I know that on the left specifically, I often use the metaphor of herding cats, that we have so many issues that we want to fight for. It's very hard for us to unite around one of them. But any number of those issues, or all of them at one, would be easier to tackle if a provision, a bill like this Anti-Corruption Act was actually a thing of reality, that all of those issues, all of those walls come down and are more realistic once we get the money out of politics. What type of response? I saw a huge, number of co-signers. I see that people are sharing this everywhere. What type of response are you seeing from individuals? It's great. I mean, we've got 370,000 citizen co-sponsors. It has gotten flatter. We've experienced a slowing of growth recently, which we're about to fix with some great videos and other things. I recommend everybody sign up at represent.us, become a citizen co-sponsor, go to our Facebook page, like us, and you will receive some amazing multimedia and amazing actions in your district, wherever you are in the country, so that you can get the tools to get your politician on record as for or against the act. And then, slowly but surely, 2014, 2016, we are going to methodically, with millions of dollars, we are going to take down opponents of reform. This is a long-term project. That we are not going to accomplish this in a year or two. This is going to take several years. It's going to take almost as long as it took for the system to become corrupt. Yeah, but you guys are going after it in the elections. I see Mother Jones wrote a piece on Represent Us, the group that you work for, and said that you are going after a hard-hitting campaign against members of Congress who fail to sign on to this bill and, really going to make an impact in 2014. Any word on that, on how that's going, or should we expect to see commercials from Represent Us, or is there ways people can help out with that effort? Yeah, I mean, we're raising money, we're building an army, so we have a combination. 2012 showed money alone is not going to do it, and Karl Rove learned that the hard way. He was out organized. So what we're doing is we're creating a huge organizing apparatus. We need everyone to go to represent.us and sign up and become part of it, and we're raising millions of dollars. We'll see in 2014, depending on how good of a job we do between now and then, we'll know how many races we can play ball in and actually affect. But I do know that listeners really do need to take to heart this new sort of view of the world that's necessary if we're going to fix it. And that is, we have to stop dividing ourselves and, frankly, allowing ourselves to be divided by the ruling class in these false lines of conservative versus liberal or Democrat versus Republican. They're becoming meaningless. We have to unify
around the collective understanding that Congress is corrupt, government is corrupt, and we must fix it. And that's why Congress has an approval rating of 10%. I mean, people get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the money, the corporate power invades everything. We've done numerous pieces just this morning on how it's affected the immigration bill, on how it's affected the tax structure, on how it affects, corporate power and companies like Apple. And with organizations like yours and Represent Us, who knows, maybe someday we will face a different system. Josh, thank you so much for taking time with us. I encourage everybody to go over to represent.us and add their name and share it with all their friends. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing.
Thanks for having me on.
We're absolutely happy to talk to you. Josh Silver, again, the website is represent.us. All those links will be up with the blog post after the show. Please take the time. Go over, help get the money out of politics. You know it is one of our most important issues. You've been listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be back with more in just a few moments.
What is this? What's going on?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Say you want to go to college.
Yay!
A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East.
Go Red Wolves!
Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey, John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
When our daughter Ava was 4, we noticed she didn't talk much. A genetic test revealed that she had hearing loss caused by 2 mutated genes. One she inherited from myself, the other from her dad. If it weren't for the amazing people at U of M, we might have never known the true cause of Ava's hearing loss or how to properly treat it.
The University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is one of only a handful of hospitals in the world researching genetic hearing loss in addition to treating it. Our breakthrough research and advanced treatments combined with outstanding care help us change children's lives in extraordinary ways. For the leaders and best in pediatric care, call a Mott Patient Advisor at 877-475-MOTT or visit mottchildren.org.
She is more talkative now and more social. She loves music now. She's humming to the music, and it's sweet to actually hear her humming.
To learn more, call 877-475-MOTT.
They not only helped us find answers, they helped Ava find her voice.
That's the Michigan difference.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the START at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shana.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shana. We wanted to thank Josh Silver, CEO of Represent Us again. And we do support the American Anti-Corruption Act and getting
it's a great
money.
Bill.
Yeah, I read the whole bill. It's 12 pages. I have it right here. And I read the whole thing. And I think it would be monumental to changing our system. But we also wanted to kind of back up. We didn't have enough time to discuss this with our guest, but I sometimes I have a problem with saying that, you know, there are no differences between Democrats and Republicans, and it's all just money and power.
The thing is, I will work, and I think all of us would work with any conservative out there who's willing to support an act like this on this act.
Right.
But 100% of Congress is not corrupt. I'm sorry. There are great people.
And
Senator Sanders, Senator Warren, Senator Sherrod Brown, Alan Grayson, and there are others.
Yeah.
That's why I do like the idea of having this vote, and you can decide whether or not you're for it or you're against it.
And I would be surprised if any of those senators or representatives you just mentioned wouldn't support this.
We don't know their position
and
what reasons. You know, we're not going to describe that. And I also believe that the left was upset about the bank bailouts, as was what originally was the Tea Party for those few 5 minutes before big businesses co-opted it.
And I think both the left and the right could agree, at least the voters, maybe not all the leaders, but the voters, the actual people who it affects, could agree on the damage of money in politics.
Right, but I also believe that people who vote Republican have been swayed by big business to vote against their own best interests because they are the shiny object are these social issues. I think that's maybe what Mr. Silver was trying to get at.
Yes.
Let's put those things aside. We're going to still fight for them. And we know you on the other side, you're going to fight for your side. Those are battles worth having. I think that equality for all is an important battle to have. That's what our country's about welcoming people from other nations to come here and thrive.
Right.
And for our gay friends to be able to get married, all those things that we on the left fight for, higher wages for workers, those are all things we're going to keep doing. But protecting the environment, this is the hurdle in the way, though. And we can all agree on the hurdle. And I think that's a good thing. But to say that we're going to throw out all of Congress, no.
Right, and this is not at all, not one iota to undercut or undervalue how important the work that Represent Us and Josh Silver is doing.
Perhaps what we're doing right now is exactly the problem, though.
It could be.
And you know what? Then I'm part of the problem because I'm not willing to give up on all those other things.
I'm not either. And you know, we do often find those issues that we agree across the board. The problem is how sometimes those issues are presented to the masses as a whole. Like, think of Obamacare. Use it as a perfect example. When you break down those provisions across the board, you get huge numbers of people, huge percentages of people that support each and every one of these provisions, that children shouldn't be kicked off of their health care, that there shouldn't be caps on lifetime limits, that people shouldn't be denied health care because they're sick. All of those provisions pass overwhelmingly across the board. And as soon as you add a party title to it, as soon as you add a political bent to it,
or the name Obama,
the things, you know, the results start changing. Look at gun control.
Sure. 90% people love it. 90% of Republicans vote against it because of the money in it.
Yeah.
So chances are what's going to happen to this, and I would love for this to work its way through, or to have this debate and actually have people vote on it, that the shiny objects will be thrown in our way, and we'll go off on our partisan arguments.
Right.
It's a difficult task.
It is.
It's a discussion worth having, and it's something worth working on.
Well, I wanted to have this, short discussion with Shane here, because I know sometimes when people say things like that we're all really just the same and it's just our leaders that separate us, my hackles go up a little bit, and I feel like, no, there are plenty of things we're different about. But if you think of that in terms of corruption, of money in politics, that statement is very true.
Right.
That statement is entirely true.
We have far more in alike than we do disalike. I'm sorry, more in common.
I completely agree.
Certainly far more than the debates you hear on television or see on television.
So,
because where we get along, they call it kumbaya, and it's not interesting television. It's not interesting floor debates. It's not the stuff people tune into because they're about making money on there instead of, recognizing that we have so much in common. And one of them is this.
Yes.
What Representative Us is doing. So, and you don't have to buy into 100% of it, but so long as you're in for getting money out of politics, sign up. I did during that interview.
And I would be surprised. I would be surprised to find any voter, any member of this country.
Who would say, I want more money in it, other than a billionaire.
This is simply written. It's not legal lingo that none of us can understand. It explains the whys of getting people involved, giving everybody a $100 tax credit to actually donate, to be part of the political system instead of sitting on the sidelines and being stuck with the leader you don't care for. I mean, there's a lot of, hey, maybe you have a different suggestion of how some of this could be done, but I think you'd support the idea.
But when you start supporting this or working on this, then you can make the changes, you can advocate for the changes. It's not even being talked about, certainly on the congressional floor.
And those differences, regardless of which side you stand on them and what you believe, would be a lot easier to make your case and actually represent what you believe in and what you want to happen if this money, this corruption wasn't standing in the way. So I really respect Represent Us and what they're doing, and I really hope that our listeners take initiative and go sign up and share it with your friends. It takes just a few seconds.
Don't freak out because it's bipartisan.
Right.
Bipartisan doesn't make it bad any more than a conservative looking at a bill introduced by a Democrat necessarily makes it bad.
Exactly.
Just because it's bipartisan, don't say, ew, I'm running away because I'm a liberal or I'm a progressive.
Or I'm a conservative.
Exactly.
Right.
Just because there's people from both sides of the aisle actually is not a bad thing.
Yeah. So that was just our take. And again, thank you to Josh Silver. Thank you to Nicole Bell for joining us so far. We still have lots more in store, including an interview. We had a chance to speak with Senator Sherrod Brown, one of those great representatives that certainly isn't corrupt. So we're going to be talking to him in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're listening. We'll be right back.
It's Thursday, May 23,